Hello everyone and welcome. I am stoked because this is my new 2024 Toyota GR Corolla Circuit Edition. Now perhaps you're wondering, why not get the updated 2025 version? Or why not get a Civic Type R? What's so appealing about the GR Corolla? Will you ever drive it over 85 miles per hour? We are going to get into all of this and much more, as from an engineering perspective, this is a really unique and incredibly cool car. And I'm stoked to finally have a manual transmission back in my garage. Now, perhaps you're wondering, Jason, why do you have the car lifted up? Well, the GR Corolla has a very unique all-wheel drive system, so we're going to perform a fascinating little experiment to demonstrate how it works. You see, most cars that are all-wheel drive, if you were to lift them up and turn the car on, the front wheels would rotate at exactly the same speed as the rear wheels, assuming all-wheel drive is engaged. That makes sense, right? Because if these wheels were spinning faster than these wheels and the car was on the ground, well, they'd be fighting against each other. But the GR Corolla is not like most vehicles. In fact, the rear axle is geared such that it spins 0.7% faster than the front axle. So that is to say, if the front tire were to be spinning at 1000 RPM, the rear tire would be spinning at 1007 RPM. But wait, I just said that that would cause the tires to fight against each other. And that's true. So what's the solution? Well, coming from your transmission, you have a drive shaft going back to the rear differential, and before that rear differential, there is a clutch pack, and this clutch pack slips. So in reality, when both tires are on the ground, they will be rotating at the same speed. Now, because the rear wheels want to spin faster than the front wheels due to gearing, the more you squeeze this center clutch pack, the more the rear axle saps away torque from the front axle. It effectively acts like a brake. The rear axle tries to slow down the front axle, and in doing so pulls that torque to the back, as much as 70%. Now that is extremely cool, and of course I believe Toyota when they tell me that it has a 0.7% faster rotating rear axle. But, you know, seeing is believing. So I stuck a piece of tape on the top of each tire. In theory, if the front tire rotates 1,000 times, the rear tire should rotate 1,007 times. 1007 divided by 1000, 1.007, or a gear that rotates 0.7% faster. So I hopped in the car, put it in rear torque bias mode so that it locks the center clutch as much as possible, slowly let out the clutch, and the wheels literally didn't even budge, and the engine stalled. What? Okay, so traction control and stability control systems don't like it when wheels are up in the air. So I fully disabled traction and stability control, let the clutch out, and away we go. Now, I won't make you sit here and count the rotations like I did, but you can see after 20 wheel rotations of the front tire, the rear tire is slightly ahead. After 40 rotations, it's about a quarter turn ahead. And if we speed this up, after 159 rotations of the front tire, the rear tire had 160 rotations. One complete additional rotation. How cool is that? Okay, so 160 divided by 159 equals 1.0063. Not quite 1.007, but very close. And honestly, I wasn't expecting it to be perfect, because if you have any slip in that center clutch, the speed differential is going to be less than 0.7%. You could also have some slight variations in wheel speed from the left wheel to the right wheel, though limited slip differentials help minimize this. But okay, close enough, and it proves Toyota is doing exactly what they said they are doing. Again, I wasn't doubting them, it's just cool to see it in person. So just to recap, when the wheels are on the ground, obviously they're going to be rotating at the same speed, assuming you're driving in a straight line. A center clutch has 0.7% slip, so while the rear axle wants to rotate faster than the front, a center clutch slips to prevent that from happening. Alright, how about an example? Say you apply zero pressure to that clutch pack that's sending the torque to the rear. Well, in that case, all of your torque would simply go to the front tires, though this basically never happens with the GR Corolla. The standard torque split is 60-40, where you engage that center clutch a bit, and again, the rear axle acts like a brake, and it drinks the milkshake of the front axle, stealing that torque for its own use. The more you engage that center clutch, the more torque the rear axle steals, maxing out at a 30-70 split, so 70% of the torque to the rear tires. Wait a minute, did somebody just say tires? Okay, a huge thanks to today's sponsor, Continental. They've hooked up my new ride with the Extreme Contact Sport 02s. These are an ultra high performance summer tire that are excellent in both wet and dry conditions. If you look at any third-party testing, you'll find these things have crazy grip, really good stopping distances, and surprisingly, for a high-performance summer tire, they actually have good tread life. Now, if you don't need the highest performance or you want a tire that you can run year-round, they also have the Extreme Contact DWS 06 Plus. This is a high-performance all-season that still has really good wet and dry grip, but it can even handle light snow. I actually debated between these two tires, and if this was a rear-wheel drive car, I might have gone with the DWS 06 Plus. Having a little less grip can make a rear-wheel drive vehicle a bit more lively. In this case, because of its really good all-wheel drive system, it already has so much grip, so sliding in dry conditions isn't realistic. Going with the ECS02 simply means maximizing performance. And when snow starts to fall, I'm going to throw it on some Viking Contact 7s. Oh boy, look at all these tires! You should see my basement. It is truly a beautiful sight to see. I've been running the Extreme Contact Sport 02s on my Model 3 Performance as well as my GR Corolla. It's a super grippy, very responsive, super fun tire. You can find a link to it in the video description. Okay, I've gotten distracted. Let's get back to the GR Corolla. Now, I don't want to say that I have a type, but this is the third time that I've bought a hatchback that is all-wheel drive, that has a manual transmission, that is built in Japan, that is blue. So maybe I have a type, but I'm here to convince you that I bought this for completely different reasons than I bought my STI or the Crosstrek. You see, when I bought the STI, I didn't have access to press cars. I hadn't driven all of the options, so I bought something that I thought sounded good on paper. And in my opinion, while the STI is super fun if you're driving on dirt or snow, I'm not a huge fan of how it drives on roads. It just doesn't feel that special on pavement. The Crosstrek was a practical purchase. It just so happens to have a ton of similarities. But it wasn't purchased as a toy like the STI was. Now, because of my history with the STI, I didn't actually expect to like the GR Corolla. On paper, it sounded exactly like the things that I have learned after driving hundreds and hundreds of cars that I don't like. First, it has a tiny engine. Just 1.6 liters and only 3 cylinders. How disappointing. Second, it's heavily boosted, over 25 psi of boost. I don't like turbocharged engines. I just don't. The turbo lag, the lack of bottom end torque, it's just not for me. So what an absolute shock that when I drove the GR Corolla for the first time, I fell in love. This really is something special, something that shouldn't exist, that financially makes very little sense. But it's a project built out of passion, the car the enthusiast engineers at Toyota wanted to make, and more importantly, did. So let's go on a journey exploring this incredible machine, starting with the engine. On paper, as I mentioned, this engine is everything I hate in an engine. It's tiny and heavily boosted, and yet somehow it works. Despite the size, it's making 300 horsepower at 6,500 RPM, and thanks to advancements in modern turbos, hits a peak torque of 273 pound-feet at just 3,000 RPM. Now, I mentioned it's tiny at 1.6 liters, but it's a big, or should I say honest, 1.6 liter. 1.618 liters, to be precise. Plenty of times manufacturers will state, hey, it's a 5.0 liter V8, and turns out it's actually only 4.95 liters. You know, like how dudes are always saying they're 6 feet tall, and it's like, look man, even with boots on, it's not happening. Oh, sorry. There's no shame in being 5'9". Anyways, it's a big 3-cylinder. And another cool thing about 3 cylinders, unlike 4 cylinders, is that they have naturally balanced primary and secondary forces. So they're actually very smooth, despite not having as many cylinders firing. That's me coping with the fact that it only has 3 cylinders. And the turbo is cranking out so much boost, 25.2 psi. It's difficult to overstate just how potent these 3 pistons are. We're talking absolutely chart-topping cylinder pressures for a production car. The torque produced per liter is more than double what you'd see in a typical car these days. What it lacks in size, it makes up for in spice. Definitely not relatable. Another cool thing about this engine is that it uses Toyota's D4S fuel injection system. So you have direct injection, but you also have port injection. Now, every time I chat with a powertrain engineer about direct injection systems, they tell me 2 things. First, direct injection does in fact cause carbon deposits to build up on the intake valves. But second, that they don't care because they don't see negative consequences from it. Personally, I like the peace of mind knowing that it has port injection because it means that it keeps the intake valves clean. I had significant deposits on my direct injection Miata with just over 30,000 miles on it. At the same point, I've seen a Toyota D4S engine's valves with 120,000 miles on them, and the intake valves have almost no deposits. While it is not the main purpose of D4S, it clearly is an effective method of keeping the valves clean. Moving on to the transmission, the only option for the 2024 GR Corolla is a 6-speed manual, and it's a good one. Really solid feeling shifter and a lot of stiffness so it doesn't rattle about. It's an easy vehicle to drive, easy to operate the clutch, and if you want, you can push a button and it will automatically rev match your downshifts. My only complaint is that it does have some rev hang. It's not the worst offender out there. There are certainly worse examples, but there are better examples too. As for the gearing, I love it. You have to shift. The gearing is not that dissimilar from something like a Miata, except you have way more power. Short gearing, simply put, is more fun. Not only do you have more wheel torque, but you have to shift more, and that's part of the joy in manuals. What's interesting is this thing basically tops out exactly at 60 miles per hour in second gear, so you'll see a lot of variance in the 0 to 60 times depending on the testing methodology. For example, Car and Driver claims 60 in 4.9 seconds, likely in second gear, while Motor Trend says 0 to 60 takes 5.4 seconds, while hitting 60 in third gear, which is a better way of launching the car since you don't slam into the 7,200 RPM rev limiter to make the 60 time happen. But 60 is just an arbitrary number, so who cares if the gearing messes it up? To me, I love the gearing strategy here. It's much more aggressive than a lot of modern manuals. From the transmission, we move on to the all-wheel drive system, which, as we've discussed, is truly special. It's actually the first new all-wheel drive system Toyota has created for a sports car in over 20 years. Unlike plenty of modern on-demand style all-wheel drive systems that are front-wheel drive biased and only send power to the rear when needed, in almost all scenarios, and certainly any normal scenario, this is sending power to both the front and the rear tires. And it can vary the torque distribution between a 60-40 split, a 50-50 split, and a rear bias 30-70 split, all at the control of the driver to select exactly what they'd like. Also worth mentioning, there is a Torsen limited slip differential in both the front and the rear, so if any tire has available traction, this all-wheel drive system is going to find a way to get power to it. Alright, so we've already covered the all-wheel drive system, so let's move on to the exterior, and also why I chose to go with the Circuit Edition rather than one of the less expensive trims. As far as features exclusive to the Circuit Edition, first off, it's the only trim you can get this exterior color, flame blue. That alone makes it worth it to me. I absolutely love this blue color as well as the contrasting black accents. The Circuit Edition also gets forged BBS wheels, while the lower trims only get cast wheels. Other exterior changes include a hood bulge with gloss black air vents, a forged carbon fiber roof paired with a matte black shark fin antenna, and a large, high-mounted rear spoiler. On the inside, you get unique blue interior stitching, a unique shift knob, and a Circuit Edition badge, as the 24 model year is limited to just 1,600 Circuit Editions. Now, is all of that worth a $5,000 premium over the GR Corolla Premium? From a performance standpoint, absolutely not. But personally, I'm a big fan of the aesthetic changes. Thanks in part to the carbon fiber roof, it weighs a whole 8 pounds less than the premium, though the weight isn't too far off from a Civic Type R. Now, speaking of the carbon fiber roof, there's some pretty interesting language in the owner's manual. So this carbon has a matte finish clear coat, and the owner's manual has a diagram with the roof that says, if the painted surfaces of the vehicle are dirty, wash the vehicle immediately. It also says in regards to the matte roof that rainwater can settle in and should be cleaned off immediately. Rainwater! Okay, probably overblown, but regardless, no sweat, as the good folks over at Expel, as well as Elite Window Tint in Oregon, have covered my entire vehicle in Expel Ultimate 10 Plus film. And for the roof, it's covered in Expel Stealth, so you can maintain that matte appearance. Of course, contaminants could also settle into a matte film, but overall you can worry about it far less, and it's easier to clean. Worst case, it's also way easier to just replace a film than it is a damaged carbon fiber roof. So a huge thanks to the folks at Expel and Elite Window Tint. They're an awesome shop if you're looking to get your car protected in the Portland area. They also put a 30% tint on the side windows with Expel's Prime XR Plus film, and the whole exterior is finished with a ceramic coating to keep things glassy smooth and glossy. And just from a personal taste perspective, I'm not a huge fan of badges or stickers, so Elite took off the black stickers on the rocker panels, as well as the GR and Corolla badges. I'm well aware of what vehicle I'm driving. I'm not too concerned if those driving around me aren't. Now, on the subject of superficial aesthetic decorations, Toyota doesn't shy away from putting fake aerodynamic features on their cars. Fortunately, most of what you see on the GR Corolla's exterior is in fact functional. The hood vents actually help remove heat from the engine bay, as do the side vents on the front fenders, which are also ported to the engine bay. Okay, that said, the side intakes that are usually used to create an air curtain around the front tires are actually blocked, so these are simply a functionless design choice. Though that said, there actually is a vent that comes out right here in front of the front tires coming from the engine bay. But overall, compared to something like, say, the car that's name rhymes with Supra, this is a very functional exterior. Alright, so what's the advantage of the 24 model year? Versus the 23, there aren't too many changes. There's a few chassis tweaks, but it's generally quite similar. The Circuit Edition gets new forged BBS wheels, and probably the most meaningful change up front, you now have parking sensors, which is a nice addition. But why not wait and get the refreshed 25 model year? Now, to be honest, I bought mine before they'd announced the 25. But even still, personally, I'm happy that I got the 24 for 3 main reasons. First, they dropped this beautiful blue color for the 25. The only model year it's currently available on is the 24. That alone makes me happy with my choice. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I love this blue color. Second, they redesigned the front fascia. On the 24, you have a continuous body-colored front lip. Now on the 25, they extend this black front grille all the way down, so it eliminates that body-colored front lip. Personally, I prefer this look. And finally, the third reason is they changed the all-wheel drive settings. On the 25, you can't lock the drivetrain into a 30-70 split. That's only possible on the 23 and 24 model years. That's pretty wild because you can't lock it into the highest rear bias setting on the new model year. Instead, the new track mode automatically adjusts depending on what you're doing between a 60-40 and a 30-70 split. To me, it's a huge bummer they dropped that setting, and it's a huge plus for the 24, though it's not to say they did it without reason. On that note, there are very real advantages to the 25 model year. On the subject of torque split, the new track mode can vary the torque distribution based on conditions. Toyota says that the previous track mode, which was locked at 50-50, could have slight understeer coming out of corners, and this new track mode can shift to 30-70 to support corner exit. So track mode is supposedly better, but I still wish they offered a 30-70 lockout. Another advantage with the 25 model year is the redesigned front fascia, which has additional cooling support, which means managing temperatures better. And it has a small torque bump up from 273 to 295 pound-feet, though peak power remains the same. So of course I'd love the torque bump, but I'm happy with the car that I've got because of the color, because of the front fascia, and because you can lock it into that 30/70 rear bias torque split. Now, why did I pick the GR Corolla over the competitors? Well, first off, there are very few remaining vehicles in this category. If you want an all-wheel drive, manual transmission, hot hatch, it's literally just this and the Volkswagen Golf R. And to be honest, the Volkswagen Golf R was never in the running for me. To explain why, I think Volkswagen's press release summarizes it perfectly. They state the Golf R is, quote, a top-tier performance car while avoiding flamboyant styling that does not offer engineering benefit. Very simply, the Golf R is a car for adults, and the GR Corolla is a car for children. And I am a child with gray hair, but a child on the inside nonetheless. The Golf R is an exceptional vehicle. It does everything in a buttery smooth manner, and it's visually understated. I respect that strategy, and it's awesome for a daily. It's part of why I love my Model 3 Performance. It's completely understated visually, but performs incredibly. But I'm buying a toy, not a daily, and I want my toy to look like a toy and drive like a toy, and I mean that in the most complimentary manner possible. To me, this feels more special to drive than a Golf R, even if the Golf R were to outperform it on a track. The Golf R is super refined. Again, not a bad thing, just different. The GR Corolla just has more drama and more playfulness, in my opinion. And I love its fun-loving and flashy exterior. I did genuinely consider the Honda Civic Type R, which I think matches the ethos of the GR and has the drama and engine to go along with it. Genuinely, I have a difficult time determining which car is more fun to drive. I'd rank the Type R and GR Corolla equal. The Type R does seem more practical, as it's more spacious inside with more cargo room, though it does only seat 4 to the GR's 5. The Type R weighs a little less, and because it's sending so much power to just the front wheels, it does have a bit more drama under acceleration. All good things. The GR does have some winning points, however. They're running 18-inch wheels and tires, which are using beefier sidewalls, which I respect. Honda actually downsized their wheels from 20 inches to 19 inches on the new Type R, which is the right direction. I think the GR strikes the right balance. The beefier sidewalls will be more comfortable and less likely to get flats. The Corolla also has a proper handbrake, which will disconnect the rear wheels from the drivetrain and let you get silly, while the Civic Type R has an electronic parking brake. Boo! And finally, the GR Corolla has all-wheel drive. That was my biggest reason for going with it. I may have ended up in an Integra Type S. My first car was an Integra, and I love the new Type S. But I spend too much time driving on snowy mountain roads in the winter, so I really wanted all-wheel drive. And it doesn't hurt that this has such a cool all-wheel drive system. Oh, and one last thing. When I bought my Ford Maverick recently, somehow in the comments, a lot of people were assuming that Ford just sent me the car for free, that car companies just send me free cars. So let me be perfectly clear. I bought that Ford Maverick with my own money, just like I bought this with my own money, just like I bought every car I've ever owned. While I'd happily accept a GR Corolla for free, I paid MSRP for this car. With the options selected, it turned out to be $47,177 before taxes. As for future plans for it, I'm pretty open to anything, though I'm also happy with where it's at with PPF, tint, stickers and decals deleted, and some fresh new tires. I don't really have any current plans to track it, and I definitely won't take it above 85 miles per hour. Definitely not. That would be dangerous. If you know, you know. If you'd like to get my driving impressions of the GR Corolla, or if you want an even more detailed explanation of how the all-wheel drive system works with diagrams and visuals, I'll have links to those two videos. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. Thanks for watching.